So this is the sixth session on the topic music through Matlab. Now so far we have seen how to use a sine wave in order to generate a musical note. But now we would like to study more complex notes like a square wave or a sawtooth wave and see how the timbre of the sound changes. Alright. So what we are going to do is to study how to generate these signals, square and the sawtooth, and how to use them as musical notes. Alright. Now let us first of all see a general method of generating non-sinusoidal periodic waveforms, and one mathematical technique that is useful in this case is called as a Fourier series. This involves quite a bit of maths, but what we are going to do is to simply show to you the formulae and then directly the results, and we will apply them in order to generate our musical notes. Alright. So first of all note that Fourier series can be applied to any periodic signal with period t. So such a signal can be represented by Fourier series. And Fourier series itself consists of sum of cos and sine terms having frequencies which are related to the fundamental frequency. Remember, we are talking about a periodic signal with a period t. So it will have a fundamental frequency which is 2 pi by t. So in general, a non-sinusoidal but a periodic waveform will have a fundamental component, may have a second harmonic, third harmonic, fourth harmonic, and if you know the amplitude of these various harmonics, then you can generate these waveforms. The question is how to obtain the amplitudes. So let us see the general form of the Fourier series. It's given, this is the general form, this is the DC component, these are the cosine terms and these are the sine terms. It is not necessary that every waveform will have cos and sine terms both. Some of them may have only sine, some of them may have only cosine, and some of them could have both of them. The question now is how to find A0, AN, BN, etc. So for that you have got these formulae which are somewhat involved, and if you know how the signal changes over one time period, for example in a square wave it's going to be constant over half the cycle. In a sawtooth it will be linear over one period and then it will abruptly come down to 0 and so on. So in general for a given periodic waveform ft will be known. Then by solving these integrals you will be able to get AN and BN. So what I am going to do is not going through the entire calculations but directly show you the result for the waveforms in which we are interested. So let's first of all look at the sawtooth. Note that it's linearly changing over 0 to t. So we can write the expression for ft, perform the integration, and when we do that we get this result. So this is a DC component. DC component is not really useful for us to generate a musical note which need not have DC component. It does not contribute anything to the timbre of the sound. So in this case you can see that this is going from n equal to 1 to infinity in theory. In practice we will retain only a few terms. More and more terms you retain, closer and closer will be the waveform that you generate to the actual sawtooth that you want. In this case we are not too much worried about reproducing exactly the sawtooth. As long as we get a reasonably good tone, that is good enough for us. Alright, so you can see you will have n equal to 1 will mean fundamental component, n equal to 2 will mean second harmonic, and so on. And as n changes, the amplitude changes. So we can tabulate these results. For A equal to 1, if you assume that, then it's easy to calculate this. This is the fundamental component. Its amplitude is minus 0.318, etc. Second harmonic, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So we are retaining 6 terms, and that will give you the kind of wave that we will study. Okay, so let us now see the function for generating the sawtooth waveform. So the output from this function is the variable s, which will hold the sawtooth samples. What are the inputs? Input is the t array and the f1. Remember, this t array was generated in the note function, and f1 is also generated in the note function, and from in the note function we will call this function. but right now we are just studying this function itself. So you define all your constants a1 that we have already seen. Remember, all these are negative, so we will put the negative at the end. So y1 you calculate by using a1, so a1 sine of 2 pi f1t. So this is your fundamental component. This is the second harmonic, y2, third harmonic, fourth, fifth and sixth, and all these 6 fundamental etc. all these are added together, and finally we put the negative sign. Remember, in that tabular results we had a negative sign, so s equal to minus y. So then s is returned. Now in order to see how this waveform looks like, let us write a small piece of code in order to plot the waveform. So what we do, this is as usual, clear CLC, CLF, define the t vector and then call the function wave sawtooth, and you provide the parameter t, which is a vector defined here, and 260, that is the frequency that we are providing as a parameter. And then you plot this. You plot only 500 samples so that you are able to see the waveform, and then as usual grid on X label, Y label, title, etc. So let's see how it looks like. This is how it looks like. So this is not of course perfectly sawtooth, however it produces a pleasant enough note, so that is good enough for us. It's not necessary that you must have a perfect sawtooth in order to generate a musical note. Alright. Next, remember that the musical note consists of two parts. One is the waveform itself and second is the envelope. So let us see the next program tells us how to get the complete note. So what you do, you define the t vector, then now use the envelope function. Remember, this was generating ADSR. Then you use the equal function. We have already discussed this. Now call the sawtooth function and perform the product of the envelope and the waveform itself, and then you plot it. So you are plotting both the waveform, the envelope and the product of the two, which is the final musical note. So this is how it will look like. So this is my waveform, this is my ADSR, and when I take the product of the two, I get it like this. Note that in this case the entire time period is used 1 second. That is why you are not able to see the waveform. So in order to see the waveform, I have deliberately kept a short time here, only 500 samples. That is why you are able to see this. Alright, so that is how the sawtooth wave looks like. Then we would like to generate the square wave. So for the square wave, this is the expression you will obtain after performing those integrations. And in this case, note that if you want to generate a square wave, you use only odd harmonics. That means n equal to 1, which is the fundamental, it will have 1.27, third harmonic 0.42, etc., fifth, and we go up to 11. So again, let us see the function that will generate a square wave. Again, this is similar to what we did in the case of sawtooth. So this is the output variable, these are the input parameters. Then you define a1, a2, a3, etc. Based on the table we have just now seen. So this is the fundamental component, then this is the third harmonic, fifth harmonic, seventh harmonic, ninth harmonic and the 11th harmonic. You add all of them and then return. So this is how you generate the square wave. Again, you can write a similar program in order to plot the square waveform, similar to what we have done, so I am not explaining it again. So what you will get is this waveform here, again plotted for a short amount of time so that you are able to see the waveform. Here we use the complete 1 second where ADSR envelope is plotted, and this is where product is plotted. So this is how the final note will look like. Now we modify the note function. Remember, in our earlier functions we had simply used sine wave for our wave for generating the waveform. Now we can use either sawtooth or square wave depending on, see, if I don't want square, I'll just put it in the comments, that is percentage, so I'll get sawtooth. but if I want square wave, then I'll put this in comments and I'll get the square wave. Alright, the rest of it is similar. Whatever we have explained so far, all that applies. This generates the ADSR, this is the equal function, this will generate sawtooth, product of ADSR and the waveform, and then you return. So now let us generate the melody. Again, exactly same melody that we had studied before. Only difference now is that you are now calling node G4 function, because this is modified in order to take care of sawtooth and the square wave instead of the sine wave. So you can generate, and now we are ready to see how the sounds for sawtooth, how it sounds. Let us see. Okay, that was sawtooth. Square wave, the nature of the sound will be slightly different. Alright, so we have seen that by using more complex waveforms, you can generate different nature of sound for the musical notes, and that's all in this session.